The great lunar hall stretched across the palace like a frozen sea. Thousands of bodies knelt on the cold marble floor. They came from 3 different planets. They came from the richest families. They came with hope burning in their hearts. Every single one of them wanted the same thing. They wanted to be chosen by the White Lycan King. Kong Tai-ho walked slowly through the rows of kneeling candidates. His white hair fell past his shoulders like fresh snow. His eyes were pale gray, almost silver, and they held no warmth. He was tall and broad, built like a warrior, but he moved with the silence of a ghost. Behind him, his generals and advisors followed at a respectful distance. This was the annual choosing ceremony. It happened every year, and every year the result was the same. Tai-ho stopped before a beautiful Omega from the Northern Territories. She lifted her face, hope shining in her dark eyes. Her scent was strong and sweet. Any other alpha would have claimed her instantly. Tai-ho looked at her for 3 seconds. Then he walked past without a word. The Omega's face crumbled. She lowered her head to hide her tears. He continued walking. Another candidate. Another rejection. And another. And another. General Park Min-ho watched from the side of the hall. He was Tai-ho's closest friend, his beta, and his most trusted soldier. They had grown up together in this very palace. Min-ho knew Tai-ho better than anyone alive. And yet even he could not understand why the king refused every single mate presented to him 200 years. That was how long Tai-ho had been rejecting candidates. 200 years of choosing ceremonies. Thousands upon thousands of Omegas and even some Alphas had knelt before him. Not one of them had made his wolf stir. The council elder, an ancient Lycan named Ji-hoon, leaned toward Min-ho. His voice was a dry whisper. The council grows impatient. A king without a mate is a king without an heir. The bloodline must continue. Min-ho said nothing. He knew the politics well. He also knew that Tai-ho did not care about politics. In a dark corner of the hall, another figure watched the ceremony. Kong Sua was Tai-ho's cousin. She was an alpha herself, strong and ambitious. Her eyes followed Tai-ho's every movement with barely hidden hunger. She believed that a mateless king was a weak king, and weak kings could be replaced. The ceremony ended 2 hours later. Tai-ho had walked through every row. He had looked at every face. He had rejected them all. The candidates were escorted out. Some cried openly. Others walked with stiff dignity, hiding their shame. The hall emptied slowly until only the king and his inner circle remained. Another year, Ji-hoon said carefully. Another disappointment for the people. Tai-ho turned his silver eyes toward the old elder. The people want a queen. I want a mate. These are not the same thing. Your wolf does not respond to anyone, Your Majesty. Perhaps it never will. Perhaps you should consider a political match instead. My wolf will choose, Tai-ho said coldly, or I will die alone. There is no middle ground. He walked out of the hall before anyone could argue further. That night, the palace celebrated. Music and laughter filled the upper floors. Nobles drank expensive wine and gossiped about the failed ceremony. But Tai-ho wanted none of it. He slipped away from his guards and walked down into the forgotten parts of the palace. The lower levels were old and dusty. Servants lived here. Workers who cleaned and cooked and maintained the massive building. They were invisible to noble eyes. Tai-ho preferred their honesty to the fake smiles of the court. He walked through narrow corridors, lit by dim yellow lights. The sounds of celebration faded behind him. Down here there was only silence and shadow. Then he saw her. She knelt on the stone floor, scrubbing at a dark stain with a worn brush. Her clothes were simple and gray. Her hair was black and pulled back in a messy knot. She was small, almost fragile-looking, and she worked with her head down. Tai-ho stopped walking. Something inside him shifted. Something that had been sleeping for 200 years suddenly opened its eyes. His wolf. It rose inside him like a wave. It pressed against his mind with an urgency he had never felt before. His heart began to pound. His hands trembled at his sides. The girl must have sensed his presence. She looked up. Her eyes were brown and deep, like autumn forests. Her face was thin but pretty in a quiet way. She had a small scar on her chin. She looked at him without recognition at first. Then her eyes widened as she realized who stood before her. She scrambled to her feet and bowed deeply. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She tried again. Still, nothing. Her face flushed red with panic. She was mute. She could not speak. Taiho's wolf howled inside him. It howled with recognition, with longing, with a hunger that had waited centuries to be fed. "Who are you?" Taiho demanded. His voice came out rough and strange. The girl shook her head frantically. She pointed to her throat, then made a gesture of cutting. She could not tell him. She could not say her name. Taiho stepped closer. The girl stepped back. Her scent reached him now. It was faint, so faint that most alphas would not notice it at all. Omega, but mixed with something else. Something human. She was a hybrid. Half Lycan, half human. The lowest of the low in their society. And his wolf wanted her more than it had ever wanted anything. "Your name," Taiho said again. "Write it. Find a way." The girl looked around desperately. She found a dusty surface nearby and wrote with her finger. The letters were shaky, but clear. Yoon Hannah. Taiho read the name. He repeated it silently. Yoon Hannah. His wolf wrapped around those two words like they were precious treasure. "Hannah," he said out loud. She flinched at the sound of her name and his voice. Then she did something no one had done to him in 200 years. She turned and ran. Taiho did not chase her. He stood alone in the dark corridor, his heart still pounding, his wolf still howling. He had walked through halls filled with the most beautiful and powerful Omegas in the 3 planets. None of them had made him feel anything. But this silent servant girl with her scared eyes and her human blood had awakened his wolf in an instant. He looked down at the name she had written in the dust. Already it was fading. But Taiho would not forget. His wolf would not let him forget. After 200 years of emptiness, the White Lycan King had finally found the one his soul recognized. And she was everything his council would hate. A hybrid, a servant, a mute girl who scrubbed floors in the forgotten corners of his palace. Taiho smiled for the first time in decades. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally caught the scent of his prey. The hunt would begin. Tomorrow, Yoon Hannah did not sleep that night. She lay on her thin mattress in the servants' quarters and stared at the ceiling. Her heart would not stop racing. Her hands would not stop shaking. The king had looked at her. The White Lycan King himself had stood before her and asked her name. His silver eyes had burned into her soul. She had felt something from him. Something dark and deep and terribly sad. Hannah had a gift. She had always had it. When she was near someone, she could feel their emotions. When she touched them, she could see their pain. It was why she stayed away from people. Their suffering was too heavy to carry, but the king's pain was different. It was ancient. It was vast. It was like an ocean of loneliness that had no shore. In that brief moment, Hannah had felt centuries of isolation pressing down on her chest. She was afraid of him, but she also wanted to weep for him. When morning came, Hannah changed her work schedule. She took the earliest shift, cleaning halls before dawn when no nobles were awake. She avoided the lower corridors where she had met him. She made herself invisible, which was easy. No one noticed hybrid servants anyway. For 3 days her plan worked. She cleaned in shadows. She ate alone. She slept with her door locked. On the 4th day, General Minho came to find her. He appeared in the kitchen where she was washing dishes. The other servants gasped and dropped to their knees. Minho was famous. He was the king's right hand. His presence in the servants' area was unheard of. "Yoon Hannah," he said calmly, "the king wishes to see you." Hannah's hands froze in the soapy water. She shook her head quickly, not looking up. "That was not a request," Minho said. His voice was not unkind, but it was firm. "Come with me now." She had no choice. She dried her hands and followed him through the palace. The other servants stared at her with wide eyes. A hybrid being summoned by the king? It could only mean trouble. Minho led her to a private study in the royal wing. The room was filled with books and maps. A fire burned in the hearth. And there, standing by the window, was Kong Taiho. He turned when she entered. His silver eyes found hers immediately. Hannah felt that same wave of emotion crash over her. Pain, loneliness, and something new. Something hungry. "Leave us," Taiho told Minho. Minho hesitated for just a moment. Then he bowed and left, closing the door behind him. Hannah stood frozen near the entrance. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. Taiho walked toward her slowly. He moved like a hunter approaching a frightened animal. When he stopped, there was only an arm's length between them. "You've been avoiding me," he said. She nodded. There was no point in lying. "Why?" She touched her throat, then gestured at herself. At her simple servant clothes? At her hybrid features? The answer was obvious. She was nobody. He was the king. This could not end well for her. Taiho seemed to understand. "You think I will hurt you?" She shook her head. That was not exactly it. She pointed at herself again, then made a small motion outward. She would be hurt by others. By the court. By the nobles who would never accept a hybrid near their king. "You're worried about what others will think," Taiho said. She nodded. "I don't care what others think. I never have." He reached out and took her hand. Hannah tried to pull away, but his grip was firm. The moment his skin touched hers, everything changed. She saw his memories. A small boy with white hair, hiding under a bed while screams echoed through the palace. Blood on marble floors, his mother's dead eyes staring at nothing. His father's body torn apart by traitors. A young man forced to kneel before a council of elders. A crown placed on his head that he never wanted. Centuries of ruling alone. Centuries of sleeping in an empty bed. Centuries of watching everyone around him age and die while he remained frozen in time. The weight of it crushed her. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She tried to pull her hand back, but now she did not want to let go. She wanted to hold him. She wanted to take his pain into herself and carry it for him. Taiho stared at her. "You're crying." She nodded. "Why?" "I've shown no weakness. I've told you nothing." She placed her free hand over her heart, then pointed at him. She touched her eyes where tears fell, then pointed at him again. She saw his heart. She wept for his heart. Something shifted in Taiho's silver eyes. The coldness cracked. "Just a little. Just enough. What are you?" He whispered. She shook her head. She didn't know how to explain her gift. She wasn't even sure what it was. Taiho released her hand but did not step back. "Every night," he said, "I will come to the archive chambers in the East Wing. It is quiet there, private. You will meet me." Shook her head frantically. "This is not a command from your king," he said quietly. "This is a request from a man who has been alone for 200 years. You are the first person who has ever seen my pain without me speaking a word of it. I need to understand why." Hannah looked up at him. His face was still hard, still cold, but his eyes were different. In his eyes, she saw the lonely boy hiding under the bed. She could not refuse him. Her heart would not let her. She nodded once. That night, and every night after, she went to the archive chambers. The king was always there, waiting in the candlelight. They could not speak normally. He talked. She listened. She wrote responses on paper when needed, but most of their communication was silent. A look, a gesture, a touch. She learned about his centuries of isolation. He learned about her childhood on Colony 7, her human mother who died of sickness, her Lycan father who abandoned her because she was an embarrassment, the attack that stole her voice when she was 12 years old. They were both broken. They were both alone. And somehow, together, they felt less broken. Less alone. One night, Taiho took her hand again. This time, he was prepared for her gift. He let her see everything. Every wound. Every scar. Every dark corner of his soul. And Hannah, who had never been able to ease anyone's pain before, felt something flow from her into him. Warmth. Comfort. A healing light she did not know she possessed. When she pulled back, Taiho was staring at her like she was a miracle. "My wolf knows what you are," he said softly, "even if you don't. You are my mate, Yoon Hannah, the one I've been waiting 200 years to find." She shook her head. It was impossible. She was nothing. She was less than nothing. He cupped her face in his hands. "You are everything, and I will never let you go." In the shadows beyond the archive chambers, hidden in the darkness, Kang Suo watched through a crack in the door. Her lips curled in disgust. A hybrid. A mute servant. This creature had captured the king's attention when thousands of nobles had failed. Suo would not allow it. She would destroy this girl before she could ruin the royal bloodline. The silent Omega had caught the king's eye. Now she had to survive the hatred of a kingdom. Elder Ji-hoon had lived for over 800 years. He had served for Lycan kings before Taiho. He had seen wars and peace. He had seen empires rise and fall. Very little surprised him anymore. But when he discovered that King Taeho was secretly meeting with a hybrid servant girl every night, even he was shocked. He followed the king one evening. Staying far enough back that his scent would not be noticed, he watched Taiho enter the archive chambers. He watched the small hybrid girl arrive minutes later. He watched them sit together in the candlelight. The king talking softly, while the girl listened with tears in her eyes. Ji-hoon did not interrupt. Instead, he went to the ancient library beneath the palace. He searched through scrolls that had not been touched in centuries. He read prophecies written before the Lycan race had even reached the stars, and he found what he was looking for. The next morning, Ji-hoon requested a private meeting with the king. Taiho agreed, though his eyes were suspicious. "I know about the girl," Ji-hoon said calmly. Taiho's face turned to stone. "If you've come to lecture me about bloodlines, I've come to tell you that she may be the answer to everything." Ji-hoon placed an ancient scroll on the table between them. This prophecy was written over 3,000 years ago. It speaks of the White Wolf King. Taiho looked down at the scroll. The words were in the old language, but he could read them clearly. "The White Wolf shall find his voice in silence. The broken half shall make the whole complete. When shadow blood joins the light of kings, the Lycan heart shall beat again." Shadow blood, Ji-hoon explained, refers to human blood. Our ancestors considered humans to be creatures of shadow because they could not transform. And the broken half means a hybrid. You're saying this prophecy is about Hannah? I'm saying that your wolf recognized her for a reason. Hybrid blood is not a weakness, Your Majesty. It is a gift. Long ago, before we became obsessed with pure bloodlines, Lycans and humans bonded freely. Humans brought something we have lost over the centuries: emotional depth. True connection? The ability to form soul bonds. Taiho was silent for a long moment. The council will never accept this. The council does not need to accept it. You are the king. Your wolf has chosen. The prophecy supports your choice. That is enough. For the first time in weeks, something like hope flickered in Taiho's silver eyes. Maybe he would not have to fight the entire world to keep Hannah. Maybe fate itself was on his side, but fate was not the only force at work. Kang Suo had not been sleeping. She had been planning. She gathered 3 council members who shared her hatred of humans and hybrids. She gathered evidence of Taiho's secret meetings. She built a case against the silent servant girl. On the day that Taiho left for a military inspection on Colony 2, Suo made her move. She went before the council with her allies. She presented evidence that a hybrid servant named Yoon Hannah had been stealing from the royal treasury. She showed forged records. She brought witnesses who lied under oath. She painted Hannah as a criminal who had been manipulating the king with dark magic. "The king is under a spell," Suo declared. "This hybrid, which has poisoned his mind. We must act while he is away. We must remove her before she destroys our kingdom." Half the council was skeptical. They wanted to wait for the king's return. But Suo's allies were loud and insistent. They pushed for an immediate vote. Elder Ji-hoon tried to stop it. "This is madness. The king himself will." "The king is not here," Suo interrupted. "And by law, the council can act in his absence if there is an immediate threat to the crown. This hybrid is that threat." The vote was close. But in the end, Sua won by a single vote. Hannah was arrested that afternoon. She did not understand what was happening. Guards dragged her from the servants' quarters. Other servants watched in silence, too afraid to speak. She was thrown into a cold cell. Hours later, she was brought before a judge who did not look at her. He read charges she could not respond to. She could not speak to defend herself. She could not explain that she had never stolen anything. She could not tell anyone about her nights with the king. The sentence was exile. She would be sent to the prison moon, a lawless wasteland where criminals were abandoned to survive or die. Most did not survive. Hannah was loaded onto a transport ship before sunset. She pressed her hand against the small window and watched the planet grow smaller beneath her. Tears ran down her face, but she made no sound. She thought of Taiho. She thought of his silver eyes and his ancient pain. She thought of the warmth she had felt when she sat beside him in the archive chambers. She had finally found someone who saw her, someone who valued her, someone whose soul called to hers, and now she would never see him again. The transport ship entered the dark, space between worlds. Hannah closed her eyes and tried to remember the sound of Taiho's voice. It was all she had left. 3 days later, Taiho returned from his military inspection. Minho met him at the landing pad. The general's face was pale. "What's wrong?" Taiho demanded. Minho told him everything. The fake trial, the forged evidence. The exile Taiho did not speak. He did not move. For one long moment, he simply stood there, his body completely still. Then something broke inside him. The shift came without warning. His bones cracked and reformed. His skin rippled and tore. White fur exploded across his body. In seconds, the king was gone. In his place stood a massive white wolf. Larger than any Lycan had ever seen, the wolf threw back his head and howled. The sound was not just loud, it was devastating. It shattered windows across the palace. It brought servants to their knees. It echoed across the entire continent. Minho had seen Taiho transform before, but never like this. Never with such rage. Never with such pain. The white wolf turned his silver eyes toward the council building. His lips pulled back to reveal fangs like knives. "Your Majesty," Minho said carefully, "if you kill the council, you will start a civil war." The wolf growled, low and dangerous, but Minho continued. "If you rescue Hannah first, you can claim her publicly as your mate. Then the council's actions become treason. Then you can punish them legally." The wolf's growl faded. Intelligence returned to those silver eyes. Slowly, painfully, Taiho shifted back into human form. He stood naked in the cold air, his body trembling with barely contained fury. "Prepare a ship," he said. His voice was ice and fire. "We go to the prison moon. Tonight." Minho bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." The white wolf had awakened fully for the first time in 200 years, and he would tear apart anyone who stood between him and his silent mate. The prison moon had no real name. Everyone simply called it the end. It was where the Lycan Empire sent those I wanted to forget. Murderers, traitors, failed rebels. They were dropped onto the gray wasteland and left to survive on their own. Most died within the first week. The ones who lived became something worse than criminals. They became monsters. Hannah had been on the moon for 12 days. She survived because no one wanted her. Her omega scent was so weak that alphas did not notice her. Her hybrid blood made her worthless for breeding. She was small and silent, easy to overlook. She hid in the ruins of an old mining facility and ate whatever scraps she could find. But on the 8th day, someone did notice her. His name was Dojan. He was a warlord who controlled the eastern territory of the prison moon. He had killed over 100 men to build his small empire. He was cruel and clever and always looking for new advantages. One of his scouts brought Hannah to him. The scout had seen her touch a wounded prisoner and watched the prisoner's pain fade from his eyes. Doyan tested her gift himself. He grabbed her wrist and felt her power flow into him. It was like warm water washing away years of stress and anger. When she pulled back, he felt calmer than he had in decades. "You're valuable," he told her with a cold smile. "You'll stay with me." Hannah tried to run. Do-yeon's men caught her before she reached the door. They locked her in a small room. Every day, Do-yeon brought his most loyal followers to her. She was forced to touch them, to heal their emotional wounds, to make them more stable and more dangerous. She grew weaker with each healing. Her gift took something from her every time she used it. Dark circles formed under her eyes. Her hands began to shake. She stopped hoping for rescue. The king was far away. He probably did not even know where she was. And even if he did, why would he come? She was just a hybrid servant. The council had surely convinced him she was a criminal. On the 12th night, explosions lit up the sky. Hannah pressed herself against the wall of her tiny room. She heard screaming outside, gunfire, the roar of engines. Then a sound that made her heart stop, a wolf howl. But not just any howl. This one was powerful enough to shake the ground. This one carried fury and desperation and love. She knew that howl. She had heard it in her dreams. Taeho, the door to her room, exploded inward. 2 of Do-yeon's guards flew through the air and crashed against the far wall. They did not get up. A massive white wolf stood in the doorway. His fur was stained with blood. His silver eyes scanned the room until they found her. The wolf shifted. Bones cracked. Fur melted into skin. And then Taeho stood before her, naked and covered in wounds, but alive. So alive, Hannah tried to stand, but her legs gave out. Taeho caught her before she hit the ground. He held her against his chest, and she felt his heart pounding like a drum. "I found you," he whispered. "I found you." She wrapped her arms around him and sobbed without sound. Her tears soaked his skin. Her fingers dug into his back. She had thought she would never see him again. She had thought she would die alone in this terrible place. "It's touching," a voice said from behind them. Taeho turned, keeping Hannah behind him. Do-yeon stood at the end of the hallway. He was in his wolf form, black and scarred, with yellow eyes full of hatred. The white Lycan king himself, Do-yeon growled. "Coming to this pit for a worthless hybrid? How romantic." "She is my mate," Taeho said. "You took what belongs to me, then fight for her. That's the law here. You want the Amag? Defeat me? If you lose, I kill you and keep her forever." Taeho's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "I accept." Minho appeared behind Taeho, weapons ready. "Your Majesty, you're wounded." "Let me handle no." Taeho stepped forward. "This one is mine." The shift happened faster this time. The white wolf exploded from Taeho's body like lightning from a cloud. He was larger than Do-yeon by half. His fur glowed in the dim light. His fangs dripped with the blood of the men he had already killed. Do-yeon attacked first. He was fast and brutal, aiming for the throat. But Taeho was faster. He dodged the strike and slammed his massive paw into Do-yeon's side. Ribs cracked. The black wolf stumbled. They circled each other. Do-yeon attacked again and again. He landed a few hits. His claws opened wounds on Taeho's shoulder and flank. Blood matted the white fur, but Taeho did not slow down. His wounds were healing as fast as Do-yeon could make them. Hannah watched from the doorway. She felt something building inside her. A connection. A bond that had been growing since the first night she met the king. It was incomplete. Waiting for something to snap it into place. Do-yeon managed to pin Taeho against a wall. His jaws closed around the white wolf's throat. Victory gleamed in his yellow eyes. Hannah did not think. She simply acted. She opened her mouth and screamed. Sound tore from her throat for the first time in 15 years. It was broken and rough and beautiful. It was his name. Taeho. The bond snapped into place. Power exploded between them like a star being born. Taeho felt strength flood his body. His wounds closed in seconds. His muscles swelled with new energy. The white wolf became something more than a wolf. He became a force of nature. He threw Do-yeon off with a single movement. Before the black wolf could recover, Taiho's jaws closed around his throat. One bite. That was all it took. Doyan's body went limp. The warlord of the Eastern Territory was dead. Taiho shifted back to human form. He walked to Hannah on unsteady legs. She ran to meet him. They crashed together in the middle of the blood-soaked hallway. "You spoke," he said, wonder in his voice. She touched her throat. It hurt. Her voice was still broken, barely a whisper. But the words came, slow and painful. "Your name only. Your name." Taiho kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "It's enough. It's more than enough." Minho cleared his throat behind them. "The ship is waiting. We should leave before Doyan's allies regroup." Taiho lifted Hannah in his arms. She weighed almost nothing. The 12 days of captivity had stolen too much from her. He would spend the rest of his life giving it back. "We're going home," he told her. She rested her head against his chest. Home. She had never had one before. But now, in his arms, she understood. Home was not a place. Home was a person, and she had finally found hers. The royal ship landed at the palace as the sun rose over the capital. Word had spread quickly. The king had returned from the prison moon. He had brought the hybrid girl with him, and he had declared her as his mate. Half the kingdom was outraged. Half was curious. All of them gathered to watch. Taiho carried Hannah down the ship's ramp. He could have let her walk. She was strong enough now after days of rest and food, but he wanted everyone to see. He wanted them to understand that this woman was precious to him, that anyone who threatened her would face the White Lycan King himself. The council waited at the bottom of the ramp. Sua stood among them, her face carefully blank. She had expected Taiho to fail. She had expected him to die on the prison moon, or return alone and broken. She had not expected this. Elder Jihoon stepped forward. His old eyes examined Hannah closely. Then he smiled. "The bond is complete," he announced loudly. "The king has found his true mate. The prophecy is fulfilled." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Prophecy? What prophecy?" Jihoon explained. He told them about the ancient words. The white wolf finding his voice in silence, the broken half making the whole complete. Shadow blood joining the light of kings. "This woman," Jihoon said, gesturing to Hannah, "is not a corruption of our bloodline. She is its salvation. Human blood once gave us the ability to form true soul bonds. We lost that ability through centuries of pure breeding. She brings it back." The crowd was uncertain. Some faces showed hope. Others showed doubt. Many showed open hostility. Sua stepped forward. "Pretty words, Elder, but they don't change facts. This hybrid was convicted of theft. She was legally exiled. The king has broken our laws by bringing her back." Taiho set Hannah down gently. Then he turned to face his cousin. His silver eyes were cold and hard. "You forged evidence," he said. "You bribed witnesses. You held an illegal trial while I was away. These are not the actions of a loyal subject. These are the actions of a traitor." Sua's mask cracked slightly. "I was protecting the crown from you were trying to steal the crown." Taiho's voice carried across the silent crowd. "You have wanted my throne since we were children. You thought a mateless king was a weak king. You thought you could manipulate the council and take what was never yours." He stepped closer to her. "I am giving you one chance. Challenge me in ritual combat or submit to judgment. Choose now." Sua's eyes darted around. She looked for allies, for support, but the council members who had helped her were already backing away. They knew which way the wind was blowing. She straightened her spine. Pride would not let her surrender. "I challenge you." The ritual combat took place in the great courtyard. Thousands watched from balconies and windows. The rules were simple. 2 alphas. No weapons. Fight until one submitted or died. Sua was strong. She had trained her whole life for this moment. She shifted into her wolf form, gray and sleek, and attacked with everything she had. It was not enough. Taiho did not even shift fully. He caught her mid-lip, one hand around her throat, and slammed her into the stone ground. The impact cracked the ancient tiles. "Yield," he commanded. Sua struggled. She snapped her jaws. She clawed at his arm. But his grip was iron. His silver eyes held no mercy. "Yield," he said again, "or I will end you here." She had no choice. The word came out as a whimper. "I yield." Taiho released her. He stood over her broken form and addressed the crowd. "Kong Sua is stripped of her rank and title. She is exiled to Colony 7, where she will live among the humans and hybrids she despised. If she ever returns to the homeworld, she will be executed." Guards dragged Sua away. She did not look back. The coronation of Queen Hannah took place 1 month later. It was the largest celebration in Lycan history. Representatives came from all 3 colonized planets. For the first time, humans and hybrids were invited to attend as honored guests rather than servants. Hannah wore a white dress that flowed like water. A silver crown rested on her dark hair. She stood beside Taiho on the great balcony, looking out at the millions who had gathered to see her. Her voice had continued to heal. It was still soft, still rough around the edges. But she could speak now. Slowly and carefully, but clearly, the broadcast carried her words to every corner of the empire. "I was born in the slums of Colony 7, she began. My mother was human. My father abandoned me. I grew up with nothing. I was told every day that I was worthless, that my blood was dirty, that I would never be anything." She paused. The crowd was completely silent. I believed them for a long time. I hid in shadows. I never spoke, even when I could. I made myself invisible because I thought that was all I deserved. She took Taiho's hand. He squeezed her fingers gently. But I was wrong. And so were they. Our worth is not determined by our blood. It is not determined by our birth or our status, or the opinions of those who look down on us. Our worth comes from our hearts, from our courage, from our ability to love and be loved. She looked directly into the broadcast camera. To every hybrid watching this, to every human, to everyone who has ever been told they are not enough, I see you. I was you. And I am telling you now that you are valuable. You are worthy. You belong. The crowd erupted in cheers. The sound was deafening. It was the sound of a world beginning to change. 6 months later, Hannah gave birth to a daughter. The child had her mother's brown eyes and her father's white hair. She was the first hybrid to be born into the royal family. She would not be the last. Taiho held his daughter in his arms and felt something he had not felt in 200 years. Peace. True. Deep, unshakable peace. He looked at Hannah, exhausted but glowing with happiness. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what? For finding me? For saving me? For giving me a family." Hannah smiled. It was the same quiet smile that had captured his heart in that dusty corridor so long ago. "You found me, remember? You hunted me through the palace like a wolf tracking prey, and I would do it again. 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times." He leaned down and kissed her softly. Their daughter made a small sound between them, and they both laughed. The white Lycan king had refused thousands. He had waited 200 years, and in the end, his mate was not a princess or a noble or a powerful alpha. She was a silent omega who scrubbed floors in forgotten hallways. She was broken, just like him, and together they were finally whole, far across the empire. In the slums of Colony 7, a young hybrid girl watched the coronation broadcast. She saw the new queen speak. She heard the words about worth and courage and belonging. For the first time in her life, she believed that she could be something more. The silent queen had found her voice, and her voice was changing the world.